right, here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, Welcome to Backyard Bees with Father Bill. And we're here to kind of give you an update on what's going on in terms of weather and bee survival. But I like to start off by talking about just how smart bees are. I remember reading a long time ago about a survey, a study that was done, and to see just how smart bees are by putting out a community feeder. And it was maybe 25 yards away, 30 from the bee yard. And so then the researchers waited in the study, waited to see how long it took the bees to get to the feeder. And didn't take very long, maybe an hour to find it. And then the scouts went back and told all the bees in the colony, and the next thing the feeder's full of bees. So that evening removed the feeder, and they actually moved it another 25, 30 yards further away. And then they sat down the next day and they waited, and when the bees came out to see how long it took them to find the new location. And it didn't take them too very long because they went to the old location. The feeder wasn't there, but they found the new location, and that information was passed on to the bees in the colony. So they did this the next day. They moved it another 25 yards out, and to see how long it took the bees to find it. Well, it didn't take them very long at all because now the bees had learned that there was a pattern involved. And so the next day, they went out to move the feeder, and the bees were already there waiting for them. Now, I can't remember where I saw this study. I wish I had written it down. I may have written it down and can't remember where I put it. Sounds like something Tom Seeley would do up at Cornell. So, anyway, bees are smart, very smart in so many different ways. Through basically natural selection over time, they have developed the ability to do incredible things. They're the smartest insect that we know of. So anyway, they received quite a few questions. And particularly this week from local beekeepers. They were starting to see dysentery signs of dysentery on the outside, mainly of their hives. It's been too cold for the most part to open up your hives and look inside, but they were seeing the dysentery on the outside, the fecal streaks, the same streaks that we see on our cars and on our lawn furniture sometimes. But a lot of times, what happens in the winter is they're closed in. It's too cold to get out and do their cleansing flights, and so when they do get a chance to get out, they go immediately. So instead of flying off and defecating in the yard, they can't hold it. And so we do see some of that, but not a whole lot. Now it used to be back in bee school, we were taught that this was a sign of Nosema apis, which is a gut disease that bees develop from a spore. And so we were told about that. So uh, a lot of the beekeepers that went through that process with me, when we saw dysentery this time of year, we said, oh, Nosema apis. But in reality, Nosema apis is pretty unusual nowadays. What we're seeing is Nosema sereni. And Nosema sereni does not have that symptom, the dysentery symptom. In fact, it's hard. It could very well be asymptomatic. You could describe it as asymptomatic because you don't see any symptoms, but they're there. In fact, the only way to diagnose Nosema, as I told recommended to the beekeeper who called me, I said, look, she's a retired veterinarian. I said, "You've got a microscope. It's 400 power. To get you some bees. Take 25 bees and squash their abdomens and prepare your slides and look and see if you can see spores." Now, she found a great 2-minute video from Randy Oliver on how to do that. And she followed through with that. And lo and behold, there were no spores. So it wasn't Nosema. Nosema cerani, we're going to see that later on in the next couple of months. If it's there, you're going to see that in a colony that's not healthy and it doesn't build up well, and the queen's not laying a good pattern, and so forth. But most of us are using the Hive Alive fondant patties, and there are studies that show that those fondant patties with the thymol help keep that Nosema cerani down, that load, the spore load down, low, I should say low. And again, we are told that it's no longer Nosema, but it's Veriforma, because that's the actual bacteria, I guess, that it belongs to, that actual bacteria group that it belongs to. Okay, let's move on from the Veriforma Nosema questions, and let's see what we got. Okay, we got the biggie. CCD Deja Vu. Everybody's talking about the dramatic loss event that has occurred this past month to many of the beekeepers down south and the southeast, out west and the Midwest. I think it was originally reported by Blake Shook, who is a commercial beekeeper in Texas. I believe he said he manages about 30,000 beehives. He does a lot of pollinating, taking bees out to California for pollination. He's a pollination broker, and he reports to the beekeeping community. He's been on a lot of different internet YouTube channels being interviewed, but he reports that when the commercial beekeepers started to uh, organize and get their bees together to transport out to California, they discovered there weren't any bees, that they had lost anywhere from 70 to, in some cases, 100% of their bees. They were gone. And this is reminiscent of the colony collapse that occurred back in 2006 and 7. And CCD is what it was called back then. And that's where the same thing happened. Beekeepers went to check on their bees, and there weren't any. There were, in some cases, in many cases, there was resources. There was plenty of food, honey. There was brood. There was still brood, plenty of brood. Even queens with a small entourage to take care of the queen. Very few, if any, dead bees on the bottom of the hives. Just no bees at all in the hive whatsoever. In about 2009, Dennis Van Eaglesdorp from Maryland, University of Maryland, put together a group of researchers to research this situation. And they were not able to find any single uh, issue that caused this loss. What they were able to come up with was that it was probably a combination of quite a few things, but mainly they looked at a very high viral load, lots of viruses in the colony to begin with. And then, secondly, well, let me show you. I've got the book right here. Uh, that's another reason I haven't had a chance to do any videos, as I have finished my Cornell course in terms of coursework, 4 different units over a year and a half. I've got 6 of these notebooks uh, as a result from the course. And let me read to you. This is interesting. I like this. Um, Here we go. In here, Dr. Van Ingelsdorp and his colleagues from Maryland uh, did this research in 2009. They did a comprehensive study examining nearly all known stress factors to honeybees for potential involvement in the disorder. No single factor was proven to be responsible for CCD. Instead, researchers found that colonies in the throes of CCD were less healthy overall. They were more likely to be infected with multiple viruses at a higher level and to be infected with both species of Nosema simultaneously, as we were just talking about earlier, Nosema. And they also uh, researched whether or not pesticide was an issue, and pesticide levels, which is insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, in the colonies with and without CCD, and there were no findings to suggest that that was the issue. But they were pretty sure that we were talking about a very high level and multiple viruses, not just one or two, and also Nosema. So that's what they found in 2008, 2009. Now, what's going to happen this go round, according to Blake, the USDA labs have received uh, specimens already uh, from these dead outs. So we don't have to wait a couple of years like we did back in 2006 to 2009. The researchers are already on this issue, and hopefully, and of course, we know a lot more 20 years later. But it's interesting that if you think about it, if you study your history, I'll share this too. It turns out that in history, over time, we have had these sorts of loss events. So I'm going to read you about this. There have been 18 known documented cases of mysterious large scale colony loss since 1869. All right. And these syndromes were given names like disappearing disease, fall dwindle disease, and disappearing syndrome. So it could very well be that here we are 20 years later, almost 20 years later, from the CCD event, that we may be seeing another event of some kind, which is your sudden adult population loss, leaving behind the queen with some bees, leaving behind food, leaving behind brood, very little, if any, dead bees. If this is the case of what the commercial beekeepers are seeing, then it looks like we're talking about some sort of disappearing disease, fall dwindle disease. But the good news is the USDA has, according to Blake, and by all means, look Blake Shook up on the internet, on the YouTube. He's been interviewed by lots and lots of folks in regard to what's going on. Now, the good news, as far as I can tell, especially locally, we have only uh, experienced our usual seasonal loss at this time, which runs about 40%. The study that came out from the Apiary Inspectors Association, I think APIS was involved with it too, said that the 2024 loss for backyard beekeepers was about 43%. And that's about what we experience here in this location down coastal North Carolina, southeast coastal North Carolina, because we generally have mild winters, except for this winter. Here we are. Here I am sitting here after 2 days of an ice storm. Fortunately, we've got electricity because sometimes when we get those ice storms, that's the first thing that goes is the electricity. So the good news is we only had, I think, officially 1/10 of an inch of ice in the trees and power lines, which is not enough usually to cause a problem. But anyway, uh, it's still pretty cold outside. It's only 30. I think that's the high for today. And again, our average temperature is around 50, 55 during the day and 35 at night. The good news is we do have some warm weather coming soon, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and we'll be able to get in and inspect our bees again and see how they're doing. More than likely, with the cold, 2 or 3 days, the cold that we've had, we may lose some drones because beekeepers were seeing drone brood last week when it was warm, and it's hard for your worker bees, your nurse bees, to keep that brood warm. Again, most of that brood will be on the bottom of your frames, and furthermore, the nurse bees will be more apt to keep the worker brood, warm, because that's more important right now in the life of the colony is to start making more and more workers, and then the drones, whatever loss we've experienced, and you know from the mite control perspective, killing off a bunch of mites is okay too if your drone brood has chilled or even frozen to that point, but definitely chilled and died. There you go. You got some mite treatment right there from Mother Nature. Anyway, that's about all that we're dealing with right now. And again, appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and like. And I will be trying to do more videos on a weekly basis now that the coursework is finished. Thank goodness. I do have, I will have to do the exams come June with Cornell. There's a written exam, practical exam, and an oral exam, and we schedule those in April, and then you get some time to prepare, and then the examination part. And once that's over, then I'll be finished with Cornell's uh, process or program. I chose Cornell to do my master certificate because it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, master certificate program in the country. It was started back in 1977, 78 by Dr. Roger Morse, who also started the EAS, Eastern Apicultural Society, testing program as well. And Dr. Morse was Dr. Tom Seeley's supervisor at Cornell. And I have really enjoyed Tom's books and his lectures on what he calls nature based beekeeping, which is what we practice here in our neighborhood. There's three, four of us. Nature based means that we catch wild bees and we hive them, and the ones that have the best genetic traits overwinter well. We split those, and we let them make their own queens, as well as we pull queen cells every spring and put those in nukes and raise queens from again these what we call mutts, the bees that we have locally. Most of them, as far as we can tell, are feral. They're coming because we live on the edge of the city out here, and the woods are to our west and to our north. Lots of woods, huge river basin, river bottom land, you name it. And we do trapping out in the country. So I would, in closing, I would recommend if you get a chance to tune in to the National Honey Show, which is in England every year in October in London, and they have tremendous speakers. Um, and there's a researcher, an older uh, doctor from the Netherlands, and he has two great presentations talking about genetics and bee genetics. And basically, the premise is that in certain parts of the world, the race of bees, say the Asian bees, have learned to deal with the Varroa destructor mites. Also, South Africa, I believe you said. But here we are, 40 years with our bee, the Apis mellifera, and the European black bee, Mellifera mellifera. And after 40 years, those bees have not developed through natural selection the ability to take care of Varroa. And specifically, in his lectures, he talks about that hygienic behavior that seems to be very important. And so, as a result, of course, one of his explanations is that the reason they haven't developed it is that we have interfered with the natural selection process by using miticides, and which is an interesting concept. But I would definitely refer you to that because it sort of sort of supports what we're trying to do here locally by raising local bees and local queens. And we're doing a good job. We've been at it 5 or 6 years, and our bees are the ones that make it through the winter, turn out to be really good bees. And a lot of them are good honey producers and very gentle and have the traits that we're looking for. And that's sort of probably I'll be sharing more and more with you because swarm suite season is coming very soon now. Once this warm weather kicks in and stays warm, I predict that within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll start catching swarms. And that'll be fun. I'll be taking the camera out and making videos of swarms as we catch them and put them in hives. So, anyway, again, thanks for tuning in. Uh, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button and to share the video with your fellow beekeepers. And again, if you got any questions at the bottom on comments, please, put your questions down. I'll be glad to do my best and answer as best as I can. All right, that does it for today, and we will see you soon.